it's Melissa, and today I am sharing my 20 picks for the BookTube Spin. If you haven't seen this, it's something that Rick MacDonnell is doing. I will link his video below. In short, it's something where he's going to use a random number generator wheel spinny thing to generate a number between 1 and 20. And he's inviting people to make a list of 20 books. And then on January 31st, he will spin the wheel. We will use whatever number it lands on to read one of those books out of the 20. And he's encouraging us to choose books that have been sitting on our shelves for a long time or that we feel like we might not get to. And this is kind of like a push to choose a book somewhat randomly. And we have 2 months to read it. I didn't just use books that are solely on my shelf that I own. I also looked at things that were on my Goodreads TBR because one of my big goals for this year was to try to read from my own shelves and to get my Goodreads TBR down because it's a little out of control. So that's how I'm setting up this list. And he also encouraged us to do some different categories, which I think does add a little bit more fun. So I've created 4 categories of 5 books each. And here we go. Let's see if I can get through these 20 books without rambling too much. The first category that I decided to use was the lowest rated books on my Goodreads want to read list because I feel like those aren't going to get prioritized. I'm still interested in them. They're still books that, for whatever reason, I find compelling, but they don't have the highest ratings. So all of these have like a 3.5 to 3.7, I think, ish. And these aren't necessarily the 5 lowest rated because I think there were 1 or 2 books that my library didn't have. So these are the 5 lowest rated that I have access to. Number 1 is D, A Tale of Two Worlds by Michelle Faber. So this is a middle grade where the letter D goes missing and this girl has to go to this magical world to find it. Number 2 is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is a fantasy. I don't know anything about it. It's on my list because I read another book by Marlon James, which ended up being my favorite book of 2020, and I just want to read all of his stuff now. Number 3 is Trickster, Native American Tales. This is an anthology, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory from the title. Number 4 is Wicked by Gregory Maguire, so like the book that the musical is based off of. I haven't seen the musical. I'm not really big into musicals, so I don't know anything besides that this is kind of like the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West from... Is it Wicked Witch of the West or Wicked Witch of the East? I can't remember. The Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. And number 5 is Swing Time by Zadie Smith. I forget the plot to this as well. It has something to do with a dancer, and I think that's what drew me to it. And Zadie Smith is an author that I've wanted to read that I haven't yet. So the next 5 books, I decided something that might be a little bit fun is letting my husband choose 5 books. So I told him about this challenge and I said, go to our shelves and pick out 5 books that you're pretty sure I haven't read. And I gave him no other parameters. So I didn't say that he would think I would like, which maybe I should have, but these are just 5 books that he wants me to read. So the first is Neuromancer by William Gibson. I don't know anything about this. My husband told me that this is that this author basically invented the cyberpunk like subgenre of science fiction, and that this book is like the first cyberpunk novel. And William Gibson also apparently like coined the term cyberspace. So I love science fiction. This sounds like really interesting just based on that. So that is book number 6 in my my list of 20. Number 7 is Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. Chuck Palahniuk is one of my husband's favorite authors, if not his #1 favorite author. And I've never read any Chuck Palahniuk, and I think my husband really wants me to give him a shot, and I'm not sure why he chose this specific one, because I think my husband owns every single Chuck Palahniuk book, probably. But for whatever reason, he thinks this is the one for me, maybe. I don't know. That's number 7. Book number 8 is Mort by Terry Pratchett. This one I'm pretty excited for. So I've read the first 2 novels in the Discworld series. I think this is actually number 4, but they can be read out of order. And I think this one follows different characters anyway. So, I mean, this is a pretty famous series. I don't think I have to really talk about that. It's like a comedy fantasy. Book number 9 is a graphic novel, and it is the first in the Sandman comics. Neil Gaiman is like my husband's other favorite author, and he said he really enjoyed these comics, and I've been getting more into graphic novels and comics the past 6 months, since I read my very first one last summer, and so he wanted me to read this. And number 10, not that anyone's following my content like super closely, but you might recognize this if you saw a video I did last fall where I talked about all the unread books on my shelf, and I kind of categorized some of them, and one category was books that I haven't read and probably never will. My husband, like, doesn't watch my videos, so, like, at my request, I don't want to make it seem like he's, like, an unsupportive person. I have some, like, self-consciousness surrounding my videos, so he's forbidden from watching them. So he didn't realize that this book was on my list of books that I'm basically not interested in reading. And he said, oh, well, I could swap it. And I'm like, no, this might be like an interesting experiment. And it's a nonfiction called Flatterland by Ian Stewart. It's a book about math. My husband is so interested in math, and I am so not interested in math. I find it very dull. I understand that math is important. I understand. I just don't care about it. So I might end up reading this. If this is not the book picked, then it's going back on my books I'm never going to read pile. So my husband's only going to make me read this book. He's got one shot, this shot, and if it doesn't come up, then I will never read it. So my next category is books that I've owned for over a year, at least. Some of these I've owned for like 5, 6, I don't know, many years. And I've tried to choose ones that I've also mentioned on my channel at least once. So book number 11 is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I'm not like the hugest fan of Neil Gaiman's adult books, but I do like his like middle grade or like younger reader stuff. I really like Coraline. So this is The Graveyard Book. It's about a boy whose parents are killed, and he escapes the killer by running into a graveyard, and then he is raised by ghosts. It sounds like something right up my alley. Book number 12 is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, and it's about a dog who is killed in the nighttime, and I think like the neighbor, he is a young man who gets very kind of like hyper-focused on this mystery and tries to solve it, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think the main character is meant to be, I don't know if it's autistic or neurodivergent in some way. So that sounds really interesting. Number 13 is Still Alice by Lisa Genova. So this is a book about someone who is diagnosed with like early onset Alzheimer's disease. So she's, I think, like maybe in her 50s, and she's like a professor. She's in academia. Like, she's very intellectual and has all these things she wants to do, and basically this is like a big curveball in her life, and they made a movie out of this, which I haven't seen, but it was at like a local library sale over a year ago, and I just kind of grabbed it because it sounded interesting. Number 14 is 6 Easy Pieces by Walter Mosley. So these are like detective stories, and I like kind of like detective noir type stuff, like those like hard-boiled detective things. I don't know, like you're like Dashiell Hammett's, like that kind of stuff. I like that, but I haven't read any Walter Mosley, and so I wanted to give him a go. So this is a collection of like 6 short stories featuring Easy Rawlins, which is his detective character. And number 15 is Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte. Never read it, don't really know much about it. Like I know there's a character called Heathcliff. I think he's kind of an a-hole. Yeah, and I've owned this for a while and just haven't had an excuse to read it yet. My last category is series I want to continue, and I've included this because I think sometimes it's really easy to kind of just, for series to kind of like peter out, for you to read 1 or 2 that you like and then just kind of not continue on. And so the whole point of this is to, put things on the list that have been sitting there for a long time or you might not get to without a little bit of a nudge. So that's why I chose series that I want to continue. So number 16 is The Everlasting Rose by Danielle Clayton. So this is the sequel to The Bells. This is a YA dystopian I read last year where there are these like somewhat supernatural people with like somewhat supernatural ability called bells, and they are able to like morph people physically, and it's like this whole commentary on like beauty as commodity, and I thought it was really interesting, so I'd like to continue that series. Book number 17 is People of Sparks by Jane Duprow. So this is the second in the Ember series. So I read The City of Ember last year. So this is like a middle grade dystopian where there's no light in the world, that the citizens of Ember have been told that Ember is the only light in the entire world. But the light that has been powering the city, or had been like lighting the city for like 200 years, is starting to fail. Like the generators are failing, there's like power outages, and like that's where the story kicks off. And I don't want to give spoilers, but like this obviously takes place after the first novel where things happen, and it's all very exciting. Number 18 is The Dark Forest by Liu Cixin. This is the second book in the Remembrance of Earth Past trilogy. Last year I read the first book, The Three-Body Problem. I've raved about it. It was a 5-star science fiction for me, and I don't want to say a whole lot about it because like even like the blurbs online like spoil stuff in that book. So if you're into very tech heavy, like very heavy on the science in science fiction, then you would really like this. Book number 19 is, I actually own this one. Where is it? The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams. So this is the follow-up to his Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. I read that last January and loved it. It was like part science fiction, part ghost story, part detective story, part like comedy. Just very typical Douglas Adams, and I loved it, and I really want to read the follow-up to that. So that's number 19, and book number 20 is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. So last year I read The Hunger Games for the first time, and I loved it so much that I bought myself the trilogy secondhand, but in like perfect condition. So I would really love to read Catching Fire. I think everyone is familiar with Hunger Games. I actually never watched the movie, so like even though I kind of knew some of the beats of the story, and I think I know a little bit of what happens in Catching Fire, there will be some surprises for me in there as well. And like I said, I really loved the Hunger Games. I thought it was just like everything good about YA dystopian, So those are my 20 books, and really excited to see what number I get at the end of the month. If you have participated, put a video up, please let me know in the comments below, and I'd love to go check it out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.